From that first cup of coffee in the morning to maybe a drink to wind down at night, we're all constantly making these little chemical bargains to change how we feel. We trade a little bit of calm now for a bit of fogginess tomorrow, or we swap some jitters for a few hours of intense focus. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the neurochemistry behind 12 of the most common substances out there. Look, this isn't about passing judgment at all. It's just about understanding the deal, the promise, and the price. So let's dive in and see how these chemical bargains really work.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start by cracking the brain's natural chemical code. Then we'll look at the substances that are part of so many of our daily lives. After that, we're diving into the heavy hitters, the uppers that promise euphoria, the downers that offer an escape, and the mind benders that can completely flip your reality. And we'll wrap it all up by looking at what this all really means.
All right, first things first. Before we can even begin to talk about how a substance changes your brain, we've got to understand how the brain works on a normal day. See, it's got its own language, a language made of chemicals called neurotransmitters, and these are the exact messengers that these substances are designed to mess with. Now, this right here is your cheat sheet. These are the four main players we're going to keep coming back to. You've got dopamine, that's your go-get-it chemical, it's all about reward and motivation. Then there's serotonin, which is your mood, your happiness, your sense of connection. Adenosine, think of it as your brain's sleep counter. The more it builds up, the more tired you feel. And finally, GABA. GABA is the brake pedal. It's the one that calms the whole system down. Try to keep these four in mind because they are at the heart of everything we're about to discuss.
And here's a wild thought. No matter what the substance is, the journey it takes to your brain is pretty much the same every time. First, it gets into your body. Then it hops into your bloodstream for a ride. And finally, it reaches the VIP entrance, a super selective gateway called the blood-brain barrier. Once it gets past security, it can finally start to work its magic on all those neurotransmitters we just met.
Let's start with the chemicals that are so common, so integrated into our lives, we barely even think of them as drugs. These are the ones woven right into the fabric of our daily rituals, from the moment we wake up to when we go to bed.
First up, caffeine. It feels like a jolt of pure energy, but it's actually a brilliant imposter. Remember adenosine, the sleepy chemical? Well, caffeine's molecular shape is so similar that it can slide right into the adenosine receptors in your brain. It's basically putting earmuffs on your brain cells so they can't hear how tired they are. It's not creating energy, it's just blocking the signals for exhaustion. That's where that focus, that confidence in a cup comes from. But all that adenosine is still building up behind the scenes, and when the caffeine finally wears off, the dam breaks, and that huge wave of tiredness hits you all at once. That, my friends, is the crash. Nicotine is all about speed. Within seconds of you taking a puff, it hits your brain and triggers this clean, sharp release of dopamine. It feels like instant focus, instant calm. But it's over almost as fast as it begins. And here's the really clever, kind of sinister part. That feeling of tension and restlessness you feel right after, that's not just a come down, that's the start of withdrawal. So that next cigarette isn't actually making you relaxed, it's just temporarily relieving the anxiety that the last one caused. It's a perfectly engineered loop. So alcohol is a depressant. Basically, it slows down the communication in your brain, mostly by supercharging GABA, our calming chemical. That's why that first drink can feel so good. It quiets down all the noise, the anxiety, the overthinking, and you feel more relaxed, more socially confident. But as you keep drinking, it just keeps slowing everything down. Your judgment, your coordination, even your ability to make good decisions. It gives you this illusion of being in control while it's quietly dismantling the very parts of your brain that are responsible for control.
Okay, let's talk about cannabis, and specifically THC. It works by tapping into a system our brain already has, the endocannabinoid system, which helps regulate things like mood and perception. So when THC comes in, it basically hijacks that system. This is why music can sound amazing or time can feel like it's stretching out. But here's the thing, the experience totally depends on your own mindset. It can feel like this warm, fuzzy distortion of reality, or it can slide into paranoia and confusion. When you mess with a system that's supposed to keep you balanced, sometimes your brain has a hard time telling the difference between a funny thought and a genuine threat. All right, let's move into our next category, the uppers. These substances are all about one thing, hijacking the brain's reward circuit. They don't just gently suggest pleasure, they grab the dopamine dial and crank it all the way to 11.
Cocaine works in a really interesting way. After your brain releases dopamine, it normally gets recycled. Cocaine comes in and blocks that recycling process. So imagine a sink with the faucet on full blast and someone just plugged the drain. Your brain is suddenly flooded, just drowning in its own pleasure signals. And that's the rush, that feeling of electric confidence, of being totally untouchable. But your brain burns through that dopamine incredibly fast. The high is super intense, but it's also incredibly short, maybe 15, 30 minutes. And when the levels finally plummet, the crash is brutal, leaving you with exhaustion, anxiety, and this intense craving to get back to that peak.
I think this quote is just perfect for framing our next substance. It really captures the core of the bargain. The feeling isn't created from nothing. It's borrowed, or maybe more accurately, it's stolen from your own future well-being. And that gets right to the heart of methamphetamine.
So, if cocaine plugs the drain, meth dynamites the dam. It doesn't just block reuptake, it forces your brain cells to dump their entire supply of dopamine out all at once. The result is a lightning bolt, a rush of energy and euphoria that is way more intense than cocaine and can last for hours and hours. Sleep starts to feel like a total waste of time. But the price is catastrophic. It doesn't just borrow from your future self, it bankrupts the account. The brain's pleasure system gets completely scorched, sometimes damaging the nerve endings themselves. This makes it incredibly hard to feel any natural joy afterward and leads to one of the deepest, darkest crashes imaginable.
MDMA is a bit different. Its main target isn't dopamine, it's serotonin, that chemical of mood, connection, and empathy. MDMA causes a massive flood of it, and that's where those feelings of overwhelming love and connection come from. Senses get heightened, empathy just flows out of you. But just like with meth and dopamine, you're burning through your entire supply. By the time it's over, your serotonin tank is bone dry. This is why people often talk about having a terrible Tuesday, a midweek crash into sadness and emotional flatness as their brain desperately tries to rebuild its supply of the very chemical that makes you feel okay.
Okay, let's shift gears. We're moving away from chasing euphoria and into seeking escape. The downers, or depressants, do their work by slowing down the central nervous system. Their promise isn't about feeling more, it's about feeling less. Less pain, less anxiety, less of the sharpness of reality itself.
Opioids plug into receptors in our brain that are designed to manage pain. They not only block pain signals almost completely, but they also release a powerful, warm wave of euphoria. It's often described as being wrapped in a warm blanket, a place where all physical and emotional pain just vanishes. The danger here is profound. They rewire the brain's most basic survival instincts, teaching it that the drug is as important as food or water. And because of that, withdrawal isn't just a bad time. It's a state of absolute agony, as every nerve in your body screams for the one thing it thinks it needs to survive.
Benzodiazepines, benzos, are often prescribed for anxiety. They work by boosting the effect of GABA, our natural brake pedal. Think of it like someone else getting into your car and pushing the brake for you. It absolutely works, but after a while, your own foot forgets how to do it. With long-term use, the brain starts depending on the drug for that calming effect. It literally forgets how to calm itself down. This is why stopping suddenly can be so dangerous. It can cause a rebound of anxiety so severe it can even lead to seizures, as the brain, with no brakes, just goes into total overdrive.
And now for our final category. This is where things get really strange. These substances don't just change your mood. They change the fundamental nature of your reality. It's not about feeling good or bad. It's about changing the rules of the game and sometimes dissolving the player.
LSD works mainly on the serotonin system, but it disrupts it in a way that makes the brain form all these new, unusual connections. What's the result? Well, your senses can start to blend together. You might hear a color or see a sound. The world can look like it's breathing or melting. And the part of your brain that maintains your sense of self, your ego, can get really quiet. This can lead to these incredible feelings of being connected to everything. But that total unpredictability is also the risk. The same chemical can produce profound insight or absolute terror.
Psilocybin, which is the active compound in magic mushrooms, works in a very similar way to LSD. But people often describe the experience as being more grounded, more earthy and emotional. Instead of feeling like you're launching into another dimension, it can feel more like a curtain is being pulled back on what's already there, inside your own mind and in the world around you. It doesn't always show you something new, but it can reveal the hidden patterns and emotions that were inside you all along.
Ketamine is what's known as a dissociative. It works by blocking a neurotransmitter called glutamate, which is essential for how we process the world around us. By blocking it, ketamine essentially disconnects the mind from the body. The world can feel distant, like you're in a dream. In higher doses, this can lead to what's called the K-hole, a total out-of-body experience where you might feel like you're floating above yourself, just watching your life happen. It creates a space between you and your feelings, which can be therapeutic, or just plain terrifying.
So, after this whole tour of the brain and all these different substances, what's the common thread? What's the final equation when we're talking about this chemical bargain?
Well, it seems to boil down to something pretty simple. Every single one of these substances, whether it's an upper, a downer, or a mind bender, offers a shortcut. A quick and easy path to a mental state that's otherwise pretty hard to get to. A shortcut to focus, or relaxation, or connection, or just pure escape. But here's the real kicker. They aren't inventing new feelings out of thin air. They're simply hijacking and cranking up the volume on the chemical systems our brains already use to create those feelings naturally. The euphoria from cocaine, that's just a massive, overwhelming blast of the same dopamine you get when you achieve a goal. That connection from MDMA, it's a tidal wave of the same serotonin that bonds us with the people we love. The calm from a benzo, it's just forcing the same GABA system that allows for quiet meditation. And that's, I think, brings us to the most important question of all. Maybe it's not just about the pharmacology, about what these chemicals do to us. Maybe the real question is about us. It's about what we're looking for, the calm, the confidence, the connection, the escape, when we decide to reach for them in the first place. And that is a question worth thinking about.